Glad you guys are here today. That weather's not going to stop us, right? We had a pretty good crew here the first service, considering the weather. We've been in this series called Changing Our Ways, and this is the second week that we've been in this, and I'm going to be reading out of the book of Proverbs today quite a bit, because, when we're learning about money, we're learning about finances. It's not just about giving. There's so much more to money than just giving to the church or giving to the needy. It's a whole package. And so this series called Changing Our Ways, we're trying to change our ways when it comes to our financial needs. And so I'm going to have you repeat after me today, all right? Because we got to remember these symbols behind me. The first one is less is more. Stress is bad. Giving is good. Tomorrow matters. All right, now you can say it with just a little bit more enthusiasm. All right, I'm going to need you to help me today because I'm probably a little low on enthusiasm as well because I wasn't feeling good yesterday and I'm just getting over it. So let's try it again. You ready? Less is more. Stress is bad. Giving is good. Tomorrow matters. That's right. And today I'm going to talk about how stress is bad. I want to talk about financial stress. The good news about this is I know you want to get it right. I know I want to get it right. We all want to get out of debt. We want to get out of financial stress. I know that's what we want. And you know what? I just want to help. And one thing that I'm going to talk to you about is there's nothing better than having the opportunity to get out of debt. There's something about not being in debt that is freeing to us. And with our society and our community, I think it's real easy to fall in the trap of being in debt. And I'm talking about debt that is just so overwhelming that it brings a lot of stress in your life. Because, Dave Ramsey, I love Dave Ramsey, and we're actually going to do the Dave Ramsey class here. It's going to start on March the 8th, so put that in your calendar, March the 8th. You can actually sign up on the Dave Ramsey, or we have a link on Facebook or on the Roots Church app. Because there's an investment on your part. The class itself is free, but what you have to invest in are the tools of the workbook and all the different tools they give you on the website, and it's $99. So it's a $99 investment on your end. You do it through the website. You sign up. They give you all the tools that you need, but it's going to help you get out of debt. I know a lot of us need to get out of debt, so we're not so stressed out. So that's going to happen on March the 8th. It's going to be right here at 6 o'clock. We'll do 5 classes in a row on Sundays leading up to Easter, and then we'll have a break during Easter, and then we'll pick it up 4 weeks after Easter. But these 9 weeks are really going to help you to get out of debt, to get on a better path, to change some of our ways in our spending, in the way we think about money, the way we invest our money, because that's a whole nother part of that, because tomorrow does matter, right? We're going to talk about some of these things, but today, let's talk about how stress is bad. Last week, I told you that I've never had anybody come up to me and say, Pastor, I am just so excited, and my marriage is so much better now that I am in so much debt. Nobody's ever said that. Man, it's just awesome to have this 20% interest credit card that I'll be paying on for the next 40 years. It's made my life so much better. Nobody has ever said that, and there's a reason why. But people have said things like this. Man, I wish that I could travel more. I wish that I could give more. I wish that I could just help people in general. I wish that one of us could stay at home. Those are things that people have said before. And there's this proverb in 22:7 that says, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. Now, if you've been in church for very long and you start talking about debt, you start talking about money, this is a very popular verse, that when we're borrowing money, we become a slave to the lender, which is telling me that we're in bondage to the one that we owe. This is why it's very important for us to not have a bunch of debt, because a slave to the lender is simply saying this, that we got to work and work and work in order to pay the person that we borrowed money from. And we're a slave to them until that debt is paid off. This is why it's so important that we have got to get out of debt as much as we can. Just for a moment. See, this subject's really hard to talk about. It's hard to talk about because a lot of us are in debt. It's hard to talk about because a lot of us have been in a financial bind before with a lot of stress. It's hard to talk about because it's a really hard thing to do is to get out of debt. I mean, it's not an easy subject to talk about. It's not an easy subject to communicate, to help people get out of debt. But I know for a fact that when we do this, we will feel so much better about ourselves. We won't have that stress in our life when it comes to finances. Just for a moment, I want you to imagine with me of what it would be to be out of debt. Just think in your mind of what your life would look like if you had no debt. I think whenever something breaks, whether it's let's say you're driving down the road and your transmission goes out in your car and you have no debt, you're going to be like, man, you know what? We just need to get this fixed because you have the money to get the transmission fixed. If your washer and dryer or one or the other goes out, you're not going to worry about it because you have the money to go buy another washer and dryer without putting it on your Lowe's card. Or maybe you put it on your Lowe's card just temporarily because you get a percentage off. But at the end of the month, you pay it off because you can. Because I do believe there are some benefits in that, but that's my personal opinion. Dave Ramsey says no credit card, cash only. And that's extreme, but guess what? If you want an extreme lifestyle, you got to take extreme measures. Whenever you're out of debt, you say things like, where do we want to go on vacation this year? Do we want to go to the mountains or do we want to go to the beach? Because it doesn't matter to me. We've got the money to go to either place because we don't have debt. And we don't have to finance our vacation because I know people that have financed their vacations before. This is a bad place because you enjoy it for the moment, but then you end up paying on that vacation for years to come, and then you suffer for it later. You want a new couch? Man, guess what? You can just go buy a new couch. If you don't have debt, you don't have a lot of debt in your life, and you've got money saved up, you can just go buy a couch. You can just pretty much go buy and do what you want to do. The Bible says that if you're faithful with little, God will trust you with much. And this is all about being a good steward or being a good manager of God's money because it matters. You can be a giver, you can be a tither, but if you don't manage your money in a way that is God honoring, where you're always in debt, because you can pay the bills, but it might be week to week paycheck, and you're surviving, and you guys, you might be a little bit happy because of that, because you're able to do it. But as soon as one thing goes wrong, all of a sudden it brings stress onto you, into your life. And so, you know what? I pray that you want change. I pray that you say, man, this is important to me. This was very instrumental in my life years ago, is working really hard to try to get a place to get out of debt completely. I'm not 100% out of debt, but I am on the road in 3 to 5 years. My goal is to be out of debt completely. I'm on this journey. I'm still buying things. I'm still doing things, but I'm trying to be very wise on those decisions. And I just want to help you in the same fashion. And even though if you don't want to do the practical part of maybe trying to get yourself out of debt and doing the snowball debt relief that Dave Ramsey does, and you don't want to take the class, well, maybe you'll think about it more on a spiritual aspect. Spiritually, how it will help you inside. And I have 3 things spiritually that we could be praying for that can help us in our lives when it comes to money, when it comes to stress in our finances. The first one is we could be praying, God, give me self-control. God, give me self-control. How many impulse buyers do we have in here? Be honest with me today. Quite a few of you. I am too. I'm an impulse buyer. I remember about 8 years ago, my pastor friend bought one of these little remote control airplanes, the ones that you could find in a gas station. It was probably like 20 or maybe 25 bucks. And he would fly that thing in our staff meetings and be funny with it. And I'm like, man, that's pretty cool. I need to get me one of those. And so I didn't really think much of it. And it was around Christmas time, and my family was in the South County Mall, and we were shopping, and we go by one of those kiosks. You know what a kiosk is? It's that little place in the middle of the mall with a little shop. We walk up, and they have all these helicopters for sale. And the guy's flying. I'm like, this is so cool. I need to get one of these. And then I looked at the top of the kiosk, and there was a giant helicopter. This thing was probably, it was huge. It was probably 3, maybe 4 foot long. It stood about that tall on the ground. And I'm like, that's what I got to have. And, of course, my wife is like, you don't need that. I said, yeah, but it would be fun. And so guess what I did? I purchased that helicopter for about $150. I flew it one time. And it's still in my basement today. You need a pilot's license to fly that thing. For real. I took it to the bluffs up there at Gravois Bluffs, and I tried to fly that in one of the open, lots there by the movie theater. And I'm in the tall grass, and I'm flying this thing, and I get it way up, and I'm trying to control it. The wind catches it, it crashes, break the propellers, and I just threw it in the basement. Never did anything with it after that. All because of an impulse buy that I just had to have that $150 helicopter. There's a lot of us that end up being impulse buyers. But Proverbs 25:28 says, like a city whose walls are broken down is a person who lacks self-control. In other words, if you're a city with unprotected walls, then you are very vulnerable to be taken out. If you don't have something protecting you from foreign enemies, if we don't have something protecting us from being an impulse buyer by asking God to give us self-control, then we are going to end up in a bad place. And here's what I've learned about every single one of us. Every one of you have a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old living inside of you. You do. You really want that thing, and you'll kick and scream within yourself until you get it, and you will reason with yourself, I earned it, I've deserved it, it's only this amount, and you just have no self-control. And what you got to do is you got to lock that little kid up. Don't let him or her get out of you, man. It happens to all of us. Trust me. Ladies, let me pick on you for a minute. Ladies, listen. You go shopping and you go visit Clarence. You know who Clarence is? I call him Clarence. It's really Clarence. But every time my wife goes shopping, I said, where are you going, to visit Clarence? I'm very happy that my wife will go right to the Clarence aisle the very first thing she goes. That's good. But ladies, just because you find it on clearance doesn't mean that we need it. Little by little, you will sink the ship by buying a little clearance here and a little clearance there and a little clearance everywhere. When we were in San Diego, there was a Forever 21 that was going out of business, and they didn't have hardly any clothes left in there. These clothes were like 10 cents, 25 cents, 30 cents. Oh, listen to you ladies. You loving it. And there was a line forever long to check out. And my wife had a pile of clothes. I go, what are you doing? She goes, it's only $8 for all of this. This is 10 cents. But do you need it? Or are you just buying it because it's 10 cents? Because ladies, here's what you end up doing. You go home and you tell your husband that you went shopping and you found it on the clearance aisle, and you know you probably shouldn't have bought it anyway. So you have to tell him that you saved a lot of money on clearance. And that's what we end up doing, and we end up sinking the ship little at a time. But men, you don't sink the ship, you blow it right on up. You blow the ship up right off the very beginning. You say, I bought a boat. I bought a boat. And I had to buy a truck to pull the boat. As a matter of fact, they had a special with 2 jet skis that went with the boat as a package. So now you bought a boat and a truck and some jet skis, and your wife looks at you and says, now I guess you want a lake house. We'll just blow it all at one time, guys. We are so good. You know, the difference between a man and a boy is the price of his toys. It's so true, isn't it? And we got these moments, man, that we have to be able to get self-control. And I remember many times as my wife and I, we did Dave Ramsey years ago, and we go on this thing, and if you're in any business, you probably understand what this is called. It's called a spending freeze. You got to stop spending money so you can either get out of debt or you can save money so you can buy something else, whatever it is that you want to do. But in order to do that, you're limited on how much money you make, so you got to go on a spending freeze. You got to stop spending money, which means you got to stop buying that $5 Starbucks every time that you go out. You got to stop eating out every time you turn around. There's so many little things. I realized not too long ago that I was spending about $50 a week on Starbucks. But I didn't know it. Because, you got the app and you put a little money on the app and then you just purchase off the app, and next thing you know, you get your credit card statement, or you get you look at your bank statement, and all of a sudden you're like, I spent that much at Starbucks? $50 a week, every week is $200 a month. $2,400 a year on coffee. That's how quick it can go. And I've learned something about money. If you don't track your spending, then you're never going to figure out where your money's going. You gotta track it. You got to know where it's going. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have to say no for a little while, right? We're going to have to say no for a little while. Say no. No. You need to learn the word no. Say no. No. Look at your spouse. Say no. No. Look at your other spouse. Look at the other person and say no, no. No, we got to learn no, and we're gonna learn to say no for a little while so we can say yes for the rest of our lives. You know, for some of you, this is all you need, honestly. For some of you, you do really well at your finances. You just don't do well at saying no to some things. Because I know a lot of people that have the money to buy things, but we don't always need it, so maybe we just learn to say no to it just for a little while so we can say yes for the rest of our lives. So ladies, you're going to have to say no just for a little while. You're on a spending freeze, ladies. You got to say no for a little while of getting your nails done every week. I'm beating up on the ladies a little bit today. You'll forgive me later, right? Ladies, listen to me. You know that the guys aren't paying attention to your nails, right? You're doing your nails so other ladies see your nails. I know this for a fact because I've never had a man come up to me and said, "Did you see the size of those nails on her? Are those real or fake?" Come on, church. That's funny right there. Nobody does that. No man does that when it comes to a lady's nails. Of course not. Guys, you might not be able to play golf 2 times a week or 1 time a week. Maybe you like this one golf course that costs you more money. Maybe you need to go to a different golf course that costs less money so you can still have your time of playing golf. I don't know what it is that you got to say no to. Dave Ramsey says if you live like no one else, later you can live like no one else. And I think that's one of the struggles in our society is you got a bunch of young people, including myself, that used to think that I should have exactly what my parents have or what somebody else has that's been working for 20, 30 years that they worked a long time to get. There's many people that have a lot of things, but they just didn't go out and buy it yesterday. They've been accumulating those things. Maybe they paid them off. Maybe they paid cash for them. But as young people, we see that and we think we got to have everything that our parents have. And so we will go into debt in order to have what we have, or we'll go into debt by keeping up with the Joneses. And I see this a lot, where people have to keep up with the Joneses all the time. And what I believe is Dave Ramsey says you got to pray like it all depends on God, but you work like it all depends on you. And this is my favorite quote of Dave Ramsey right here. You have to act your wage. Act your wage. So many people are living beyond the means. They're living beyond what they actually make. And so you have to act your wage. Okay? You might have champagne taste and beer money. It doesn't work. Okay? It doesn't work. That's a little analogy I thought some of you might get. It's the same thing as acting your wage. You got to make sure you live within your means. So you're asking God for self-control. The second thing you got to pray for is you say, God, give me understanding. You know, I believe a lot of people today just don't have understanding when it comes to finances. They don't have understanding when it comes to compound interest. They don't have any understanding of what it means to pay a payment of, X amount of dollars over the next 7 years for a car at whatever percent interest rate. They don't have an understanding of what it looks like to prepare for the future. Generations ago, they didn't prepare for the future. They didn't do investments. They didn't think about insurance and life insurance. They didn't do those things. They relied on Social Security. And I know this for a fact because I talked to certain generations that have never invested a dollar because that's not the way their thinking was. Nobody taught them to invest for their future. It was all about now. It was all about what it takes now. And when I go to do a funeral, and 9 out of 10 funerals that I've done, people don't have insurance. They don't have life insurance. And so that puts financial stress on someone else because we weren't planning and preparing or understanding that it's important for us to think about things like that. Nobody wants to think about death. Nobody wants to think about planning, their funeral and all that. But let me tell you something. If you're not planning it and you don't understand it today, it's going to cause stress on somebody else down the road. Hosea 4:6 says, "My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge." And this is why we see so many people paying thousands and thousands, I should say millions and millions of dollars of interest every single year because they don't have lack of knowledge. So you got to pray and ask God to give you understanding. Many people, when they go to purchase a car, they don't ask how much the car is. They ask, what's my down payment and how much is it a month? That's all they want to know. They don't want to know the end price. They don't want to know the end result. As a matter of fact, if you go to a car salesman, and if there's one in here, I apologize by giving this away, but I think we already know your schemes, and that is, you just want to find out what we can do to get in that vehicle at what payment per month. Well, how much can you afford? I can get you in that car for $250 a month. I can get you in that truck for $550 a month, whatever it is. Forget about the interest rate. Forget about what the end cost of the vehicle is. If you can pay $550 a month, they're going to get you in the vehicle. And it's because we don't have an understanding. I had a friend of mine was telling me a story of how he was mentoring these younger guys. And they were talking about money, and they were at this place, and the guy came in. He said, "Man, I just bought a truck." And he knew he kind of had made a mistake. He knew that he was probably going to hear it from the mentor. And he said, "Oh, no." He said, "Did you buy a new truck?" And he said, "Yep, bought a new truck." He said, "How much did that cost you?" He said, $48,000. He said, "How long did you finance it?" He said, 7 years. And then he goes, "What's your interest rate?" He goes, 19%. And he said it just like that, like a question, like, "Is that okay? Is that good?" So some of you gasped when I told you what I just told you, right? Because some of you have understanding that 19% on a $48,000 truck over the next 7 years is going to cost you right around $100,000 in interest. So he asked the guy, he said, "Okay, well, what's done is done, so maybe we can learn a lesson for the next time, and that is, how much is that truck going to be worth in 7 years?" He said, "Maybe $15,000 to $20,000. He said, "So let me make this clear. You just spent over $100,000 for a vehicle that's going to only be worth $20,000 in 7 years. And the kid said, "I never thought of it that way." See, that's the misunderstanding when it comes to compound interest that can work for you or against you. So I thought I would have a little fun today and help some of the younger people in here that have the opportunity to start investing now, start thinking about what compound interest looks like now versus later. And if you're my age or older, listen, don't let where we are now say it's gone too late, because you can still start now. No matter where you are, you can start now. You can get this fixed now. You may not have as much as the younger person would if they stick with it, but it's still going to be better for all of us. So if you take, according to the Nerd Wallet, I looked these statistics up, Nerd Wallet in 2016, the average credit card debt in 2016 for a person was $16,000. $16,000. Now, I got to be honest with you. I looked these statistics up several years ago, and the amounts were much higher than they are in 2016. They were up for a family, it was like $80,000 in credit card debt. So this Nerd Wallet says the average credit card debt for one person is $16,000. If you were to pay $230 a month on that credit card bill at 17.3% interest, that's not really the lowest, but that's the average. There's credit cards that go all the way up to 25, 29%. I just went with 17.3 in the middle of the road. And so you pay $230 a month at 17.3% interest. It would take you 40 years to pay off that $16,000 debt. You will have paid $94,500 in interest off of that $16,000. That's how compound interest works against you. Those are all the things most likely that you have purchased, you and I have purchased over at some point of our time that we've already used and probably don't even use it anymore, but we're still paying on it. That's kind of how that works. So you got to think about what credit card debt does to a person. So now let me spin it in a positive way. If you were to not have the credit card debt, but you were to have $16,000 in cash, and you invested that $16,000 right now, okay, you never put another dollar in that investment, and it gained 12% return, which is the average Dave Ramsey says on his thing, the average return of a mutual fund or any kind of investment into an IRA is about 12%. If you did that for 40 years, never touched that $16,000, but you put it into stocks, for 40 years, you would have where'd it go? $1.9 million off of that $16,000. That's how compound interest can work for you. Now, let's take it a step further. Let's say you invested that $16,000, but then you also paid $230 a month for the next 40 years to that same fund. In 40 years, at 12%, you would have $4.8 million by the time you're 65 if you were 25 years old. Now, do you think that would change your life financially? You think that would take off some stress knowing that when you're 65 years old, you got $4.8 million in the bank to do whatever you do and you're debt-free? Think about who you could help. Think about where you could go. Think about the legacy that you could leave your family one day. That's something to be thinking about. I know people that leave legacies, but they're not always good legacies. They're legacies of debt and frustration and stress. And a lot of people go this route, and it's as simple as thinking to yourself, it's good to have understanding of interest and payments and debt, what it causes now on us and what it's going to cause later to us if we don't get it under control and we don't have an understanding. So we can ask God, God, give me self-control. God, give me understanding. And the last one is, God, give me a plan. God, give me a plan. It says in Proverbs 21:5, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as the haste leads to poverty. So it's saying that when we are diligent with a plan on how to get out of debt, when we're diligent with the plan on how to invest, how to think about, our retirement, how to think about our life insurance and all these different things. There's so many different options. You can find a financial planner, somebody you trust. There's all kinds of people out there. I would bet that there's somebody here in the church that could sit down with you and say, hey, here's what we've done to give you an idea of what it is. But there's something about coming up with a plan and being diligent with that plan, because it says it leads to profit, but haste leads to poverty. When you have haste, when you just don't care and you just think, well, I'll worry about it when we get there, that is going to put you in a very, very financially poor position if you do that. There's something about making a plan. My wife and I, we haven't done it right all the time, but we have a plan. We've been on a plan for quite some time, and we're hoping within the next 3 years, maybe 5 at the most, but the goal is 3 years, we'll be 100% debt-free. 100% out of debt, house and all. And we use the snowball debt removal for that. We pay off one thing, we take all that money and we put it towards the next payment. When that's paid, we take that money and take all that and put it towards the next payment. And that's how you do the snowball debt removal. But you got to be diligent. You got to set up a plan. You got to have understanding. You got to have self-control. You got to live like no one does today so you can live like no one does later. All these principles are absolutely important when it comes to stress, financial stress, because financial stress is bad. Financial stress will lead us into a place of making a wrong decision on something else. I know this because I've been there and I've done that. As a matter of fact, back in the day when we were very young, I ended up having to borrow money to end up paying for bills because I didn't have the money to pay the bills. I was in a position that I had to borrow money. They lent me money, and they didn't know that. I was basically robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I just kept going in this revolving cycle, constantly stressed out about money, constantly stressed out about bills and finances and what are we going to do. And it just got me into this place that I finally got to the place where I hated it, that I finally decided to take extreme measures. And that's when I did the Dave Ramsey program the very first time. And we went to straight cash. Now, I think Dave Ramsey, if he's watching me, I think his philosophy can be very extreme. But there's a reason why it's extreme, because most of us don't have discipline. And so it's got to be extreme. I think, personally speaking, I think there are some rewards if you're using a credit card. I mean, today you almost have to have a credit card to do anything. whether it's buy something online. You don't want to really use a debit card online. There's too much risk there. But renting a car, things like that, you got to have a credit card. But if you're not disciplined in having a credit card to where you pay it off every month, then obviously you shouldn't have a credit card. That's my personal opinion. Dave Ramsey will tell you to never have a credit card. Pay cash with everything. So in the very beginning, my wife and I went to this extreme. We had the envelopes and we had cash. And I'll tell you why it works. Because when you have $100 cash in your pocket and you go out to eat and you give them that $100, you get back whatever change left. You go to the next place, you give them whatever, $20. You're seeing the money leave your hand, that this is all you have. And when you got $50 left, you think, do I really need that? Do I really need that $5 Starbucks coffee? No, I'm going to wait. Do I really need that $3 outfit that I can get on the clearance rack? No, I'm going to wait because I only got $50 left. You can visually see it. But with a piece of plastic, you can't see it until your bill comes in the next month. And then you look at your bill and you went, holy smokes, I really spent that much money? Yeah, because you know how easy it is to swipe a card, swipe a card, swipe a card, take your Apple Pay, whatever it is. So this is why Dave Ramsey says use cash to get out of debt. It's hard. It's not easy. It's not easy to financially get yourself in this type of position. But here's what I want you to know. If our church could grab hold of not just giving to the church, that's one part of being a good steward of God's money. You can give to the church and you can give a lot of money, but if you suck at your finances and you don't know how to manage your finances outside of that, do you think God's going to bless somebody that's wasteful with the money that He's giving them? No, He's not. But if we can catch this, we can change the generations to come of everybody being in a financial stress moment, that our church would never be in need because we would diligently be working our ways towards a better lifestyle of financially getting out of a place that's causing nothing but stress, living paycheck to paycheck, all because of what we want, all because of that childlike person that lives inside of us that comes out every now and then and wants things. We got to learn to say no to some of those things now so we can say yes later. If you plan these things out, you will profit. But if you just go day to day and not plan out your finances, that will lead you to poverty. You know, you can wander into debt, but you cannot wander out of debt. It's easy to wander into debt. But wandering out isn't going to happen. You have to have a plan. You have to say, this is what we're going to do. We're going on a spending freeze for the next 12 months or 6 months, whatever it is. My thing is, only you know what that is. Everybody's in a different place. This is not a cookie cutter thing as far as what's going on for you as it is for someone else. All I know is over the years of doing ministry and over the years of my own personal life, of my wife and I, when we first got married at the age of 20, we had made a decision that we were only going to live off of my income and she was going to stay at home. That was our decision. This does not mean if you work, ladies, that's a bad decision. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying for us, this is what we decided. And in about 2009, 2008 actually, my wife decided that she wanted to get a job. The kids were all in school, and she's like, I'm kind of bored. I'd like to get a job to make some extra money to do some of the things that we want to do and save up. And I said, great. If that's what you want to do, I think it'd be great. I think it'd be good for you to do that. And so she got a job, and it was a year later after she got the job is when the economy crashed, and I ended up losing almost my entire business. And so thankfully in that moment, my wife was working, and she was bringing in just enough to pay the bills, just enough to get us by, because at that point we had sold our house and we had got out of debt at that moment. Got out of all debt, didn't owe anything on anything for 6 years. But then as work started picking back up and we ended up building our dream home and we started to get ourselves back into that place, she was talking about quitting, and I was like, well, if you quit, okay, here's what this looks like. We can't do this and we can't do that. We can't do this and can't have that. And all of a sudden she felt the pressure of her having to work. And as soon as she felt like she had to work, she hated it. Because she went into it not wanting, she went into it doing it because she wanted to, because we really didn't need it. But then later on, 6 years after she's been working, it became she had to, or we weren't going to be able to make it. And I just contributed this to God because this was the moment when Pastor Charles asked us to move back here in 2015. And we were fine, but she felt that. And I told her, I said, listen, just quit your job. It's going to be okay. We will figure it out. We will just have to rework what we're doing. But this is what we decided 24 years ago when we got married, that you weren't going to have to work. So just quit. Well, she wouldn't quit, and she wouldn't quit. She kept going, and it made our marriage miserable because she was stressed out and hated working and hated going to work every day. And she started sleeping more. She fell into a little bit of a state of depression, and it started becoming into our marriage. So I backed away from ministry, and finally, out of nowhere, she didn't quit her job. She got released from her job, and I believe it was a God thing. Did that put a little bit of stress on me? Yep, it did, but I knew it was coming, and I knew it had to happen. But then it was 6 months after that, Pastor Charles said, hey, you want to come back and pastor this church? And I was thinking to myself, man, I just bought this house and built it, and this is what we want. But then later I got to thinking, this is a good opportunity for me to get out of this place. And that's what we ended up doing. And so for the last 5 years, we've been on a really hard strategic plan to have our house paid off in 10 years that we moved here. So we could do the things that we love to do. So we can bless other people when we're out, buy their dinners, help in a need of an electric bill, or just, anything, man. I mean, I just want the ability to have control over what I do versus being controlled over the lenders. Because I know the stress that it brings on all of us. And I hope today that you go before God and you ask Him to give you control, self-control. Ask Him to give you understanding, and ask Him to give you a plan as we go over the next 2 weeks financially of what God wants for you in your life. And I pray that you sign up for that Dave Ramsey class and that you begin to get your finances in a different place so you can live like no one ever has lived before. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your wisdom in the book of Proverbs, God, that you have given us so much wisdom when it comes to finances, God. You have shown us that when we're faithful with little, that you will trust us with much. And God, I believe that is why so many of us have a hard time with finances, and that you blessing us because we're not faithful with what little you do give us. And I pray today, God, that's going to change, that we will begin to change our ways in the way we think about debt. God, that we want no more stress in our life, that we are willing and we're asking you to give us self-control. We're asking you and praying for you to give us understanding. And we're praying, God, for you to give us a plan to get our finances worked out so we can bless other people, so we can give more, so we can do more and not be a slave to the lender. And Father, I just thank you for everything that you're doing in this church. God, that we are a richly blessed church, that the people in this building are richly blessed because of you. We honor you this day. We give you praise for it. In Jesus' name.